So essentially, with tax deeds, it's really the cheapest way that you can purchase real estate. It's the cheapest way that you can buy any type of real estate. So as far as acquiring real estate, there's no real better way or cheaper way, I guess you could say, to be able to pick up real estate, to buy real estate than through tax deed investing. And also with over 4,000 municipalities, that either be in counties, cities, states, that offer some type of tax sale properties, and they're going to be in all 50 states, there's always a new flux of inventory. So regardless if the market goes up, the market goes down, there's always this inventory of tax sale properties, really thousands of them, billions of dollars in property taxes are brought in every single year, billions. And so when we're talking about property taxes, this is really the way that the county or the county governments enforce their property taxes. And we're going to get into how that works, really through today's webinar and training. But as far as why tax liens, let's quickly go over them. Tax liens, first of all, they offer higher interest rate returns. When I'm looking at the stock market or something like a mutual fund, we'll talk to investors and they have, 50 or 100 grand. In fact, I got an email from an investor today that has 200 grand that they'd like to put into secondary, into the secondary market or into tax liens or deeds because that 200 grand isn't making them the money that they want to in stocks and mutual funds. And so they know that they have an opportunity to make a double-digit return that's backed by real estate. They're talking about a guaranteed return, and it's also a high interest rate return. I mean, most of the time we're looking at double-digit returns. If you want to bid down in some high competition states, it can go a little bit lower than that. But really, what we're looking for is those higher interest rate returns. That's really kind of what we're going after. And so there's a huge amount of opportunity with tax liens and deeds, and really deeds, is a great opportunity for acquiring property, for buying real estate. So let's go ahead and get into how this works. Before we start going through the entire process, I wanted to show you a couple of properties that we purchased over this last week. These are 2 building lots. We're also purchasing single-family homes, commercial properties as well, but I just want to show you a couple of cheap properties, at least as far as what we spent. You can see each one of these properties was $500. The property on the left we purchased for $500, and each one is in a different state as well. I wanted to mention that. This here is a residential building lot. And so you can see that building lot is in a newer community. In fact, you can see some of these homes haven't even been finished yet. You can see that the yards are being, really being put in. Oh, let me back up. Just being put in within some of these. So this is a brand new community. Now these homes are worth between $150,000 to $200,000. This building lot has a low property value of at least $20,000. It's probably going to be worth quite a bit more than that. That's just what we have around the county. The county assessed, but doing some research, if we want to go through the process of full titling that's easily be worth a $30,000 property. It's about 0.41 acres, and of course, we purchased this residential building lot for $500. Now, of course, you can't purchase this kind of lot in every single state. We're looking at specific markets, in particular, tax-friendly states. But still, you're looking at an incredible property here. When we're talking about purchasing tax deed properties, and we'll get into how that works. We're looking at purchasing for a percentage of the property's value. The property on the right is in a different state, as I mentioned. It's a commercial land. This is a 1.4 acres. You can see that it's across from 3 commercial buildings, and it's in a growing area. So we purchased this deed at an additional $500, and it's worth a estimated low value of about $25,000. So with each one of these properties, we have the flexibility to really do whatever we want. We could sell or finance these properties and start earning residual income. We could turn around and sell these properties quickly just to make a quick sum, to sell it within 30 days. maybe for $5,000, $10,000, something like that. Just try to do a quick flip for it. We could go through the process of going through quiet title and then put these properties on the market at full value with a real estate agent or a top dollar. That could also be something we could look at as well. So, in looking at these properties, there's a huge amount of opportunity. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at these numbers, these numbers should shock most people. And you're not always going to find this type of property examples. But when you are searching and going through and researching, there is these type of opportunities all throughout the country that are sitting there just on county books. So it's just a matter of you going out and finding those properties. But really with these properties, what we'll probably do, or many of the properties we purchased, we're purchasing, already 30 or 40 of these type of different properties, and we're going to be purchasing a ton more coming over the next few months. But what we're really going to be doing with most of these is we're going to be giving these to our students as far as through the secondary market. We're going to be finding all of these awesome opportunities for our students because it takes a huge amount of work to go through and find the very best properties. To find these type of gems through properties that may not be profitable, that may not be buildable, that may not be usable. So there is risk with tax sale investing, but as long as you know what you're doing and you're educated, you're not going to be going through and making mistakes. That's the beauty of tax sale investing because, we're talking about state laws that have been around a long time. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and get in to the system into exactly what the property tax system, how it works. So the property owner, they pay the county government property taxes. So if anyone who owns property pays the property taxes to the county government. Now, the county government, in turn, uses that money to pay for all of our local services. This is the property tax cycle. So essentially, they go to pay for police, fire departments, schools, education, all of the county buildings, roads, construction. Excuse me. All of those different things are paid for through the property taxes that. So essentially, it's an entire system. The property owner pays property taxes to the county government that pays all the local services. So this whole system works. The schools, all of this is paid for through property taxes, or a good majority of it is paid for through property taxes. So this is why property taxes are so important, because really, property taxes provide us with most of the stuff that we actually use. Schools, fires, roads, all those things, most of that's going to be paid through property taxes. That's how all of that stuff is taken care of. So what would happen if the property owner doesn't pay their property taxes? Well, when property owners quit paying their property taxes, really that causes a county deficit. And you've heard about different counties or cities that are already strapped for cash throughout the nation, and so they need this revenue more than anything. This is how they survive. This is how they run. How they do everything that they need to do. So if there was no property tax enforcement, many people would pay property taxes, but there would also be a lot of people that would have no reason to pay it. That you have no enforcement, if you have no collection, if you have no reason not to pay your property taxes, it may be, okay, yeah, we'll pay the property taxes as soon as we get to them. Because, a lot of people have huge amounts of money, but there's also other people that are essentially struggling. So paying those property taxes are going to be maybe a little bit further down the list of things to do. They plan on paying them, but maybe they pay them a lot later than they ever would. Or they just hope that, they're planning on catching up. They're just behind right now. And so that's really what the tax sale system does, is it allows homeowners, it gives homeowners a grace period a time period before there is this enforcement. There's a lot of things that have come in to the tax sale system. So really, the tax sale system was created to enforce property taxes, and there's really three different tax sale types. There's tax lien certificates, there's tax deed foreclosures, and there's also what we call redemption deeds. And with each one of these different types of states, essentially each one is going to be a different strategy or a different system, or these group of states generally use a certain type of system. In fact, really, when me and Shane first got started, most education programs that you could find would talk about tax lien certificates. They would talk about tax deed foreclosures, but there wasn't really a good category or name grouped for these states that are a little bit different, that do things a little bit different than either one of the tax deed foreclosure systems or the tax and certificate system. So, what we came up with was essentially redemption deeds. And now it's kind of an industry standard. A lot of companies will call that group of tax lien and deeds redemption deeds. And that was kind of the grouping. Really, the way that we created our program, our initial program, this is how we ended up working with all of these seminar companies, is we had worked for years within the seminar industry as coaches, as different trainers, in different positions with many different companies, or I guess a few different companies throughout, a 10-year period. So during that 10-year period, we were working with several different companies, and when you're on the ground level, so when you're talking to members and students and investors, you really get a feel of what those investors need and what is lacking, because that's usually the people that they're going to talk to. And so, as we're going through this experience, we're finding out all of the problems, all of the holdups, all of the things that made it difficult for most tax sale investors. And so because of that, that's really why we created this three system, these three systems. I mean, I guess we didn't create them. We just kind of categorized them in a way that had never been categorized before. And in addition with that, we also created different systems. And we're not going to get into all of our program systems today just because, I want to give you guys a good overview of actually what tax liens and deeds are. I know we have a lot of new people here today. So as far as that, we won't get into all of our systems, but we have different investor profiles. So what we've done is we've taken each one of these systems and we've broken them down into 9 different profile types. And in each one of these profile types is going to be a different strategy within each one of these different tax sale types. So let's go through and let's start talking about each one of these different strategies. So what is the definition of a tax lien? That's what we're going to talk about, tax liens first. And really a tax lien is a claim against an asset. And in this case, we're talking about real property. We're talking about real estate filed by a government taxing authority against a delinquent taxpayer. So essentially, this is a lien that's placed against the property by the county government against the property owner because they've become delinquent on their property taxes. And so, as far as tax liens, they're the enforcement method used by the government for the collection of property taxes. So tax liens are liens that are placed against real property. They can be offered to investors either at an auction or through over-the-counter to investors that are willing to pay off the delinquent taxes. So essentially, the county offers these tax liens to investors. Investors buy these tax liens by paying off the amount of the tax lien, essentially. And so tax liens, what they do is they pay the investor a rate of return anywhere between 8 to 24%. And so we're talking about a guaranteed return of 18 to 24% that's essentially going to take place usually on a yearly basis. And so that's most of the case. It's going to be like a 18% interest rate would be an example in Florida. Florida has an 18% interest rate. Now that's going to be 18% a year. That essentially means that you're going to be earning 1.5% per month on your money. And so, a lot of people, I know people all the time, I talk to students and have them email me, daily, that are talking about, essentially earning 0.5% or 0.25% or 1.5% on their money. And then we also talk to many investors that are essentially losing money. And, those are the ones that we really try to help because, they're in a serious situation. They're in a situation where every single time they go to look at their stock statement or their bank statement or however it comes to them, they realize that fees are being paid. Lots of fees are being paid, but they're losing money. And so when somebody looks at and hears about tax and certificates and says, how can I get involved with that? I am sick of losing money. If I can make 6%, I am happy. And you tell me that 6% is backed by real estate? No, sign me up. And so what these tax liens do is not only do they pay an interest rate, but they also give property owners a redemption period to repay the taxes. So what this tax lien does is it has a foreclosure right. So if the lien is not paid back within this redemption period, then the tax lien holder can foreclose and become the new property owner. So essentially, tax lien certificates are this unique way that the government has figured out how to enforce property taxes. Now, what this tax lien does is it also gives that property owner a time frame before they lose the property. This could go on. This redemption period could go on anywhere from usually, I guess, on the shortest end could be a year, up to 5 years in one of the longest states, in some more like Wyoming. So it's really going to depend on the state that you're looking at, but each state you're looking at a unique investment opportunity where you can purchase a tax lien certificate that's earning a high interest rate return that's backed by real estate. So tax liens, are really just kind of an incredible investment. And so, really that's what initially drew us to taxo investing, both me and Shade. And I guess to talk about, me and Shade's relationship, we're cousins. So, essentially, we're second cousins. He moved down the block from me when we were about 8 years old. And so since that time, we've just, really kind of hung out and been friends and really kind of family since that time. So that's a little bit about our relationship. I guess it's a little bit different training since Shade's not here today. But I think we can still get through some pretty good information. So let's get into the tax lien cycle so that everyone understands how this works. Really, 3 things happen on the day of the sale. Either the tax lien, first the tax lien is going to be issued on the property. So up till the day of the auction, the property owner has time to pay that tax lien certificate off. Then once the sale starts, or that next morning, or whatever the county has issued, essentially a tax lien will be issued against that property. Also, number 2, the tax lien begins accruing interest. So it's going to start earning interest on that day. It's going to be earning its annual interest rate return. Each month it's going to be earning that interest rate starting on day 1. Also starting on day 1, the redemption period begins. So those are the 3 things that are going to be happening essentially on the day of the sale. So after purchasing the lien, really 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, the property owner is just going to pay the county. So maybe there's a $1,000 tax lien on the property. The property owner, waits a year. The tax lien certificate owner has earned 18%. And at that point, he doesn't want to keep it going. He catches up his bill, and he is able to go ahead and pay on the tax lien certificate. So he pays on the tax lien, and automatically the lien is removed, and it goes back to the property owner. Option number 2 is the property owner does not pay the county. So if the property owner does not pay the county, let's say it's a 2-year redemption period, that property owner waits 2 years. But once they get to that 2-year period, the tax and certificate owner has the option to foreclose on that property. And so he can go ahead and go through the foreclosure proceedings and become the new property's owner. Now, during that foreclosure proceedings, the property owner can go ahead and pay that tax lien off and clear the debt. But if they don't, then of course the tax certificates will become the property. So let's kind of go through this works real quick. The property owner in scenario 1 has the opportunity to pay the county, and then of course the county is going to cut the check to the initial investment. Scenario number 2 is the property owner doesn't pay, and that tax lien is going to give the investor foreclosure rights against the property owner. So he can go ahead and foreclose on the property and become the new property's owner. And so, guys, in most cases, one thing I want to note, in most cases, you aren't kicking somebody out on the street. Most of these homes are going to be there's a reason why they've gone into tax default status. Now, that doesn't mean there's not great properties, but there can be many reasons why a property may be going to the tax sale. Because usually in most cases, you're talking about, you may be talking about a significant amount of money, but the property owner has known about this for 4 years. And it may be 5 or 10% of what the property value is. It can go higher up if there's quite a few years on the property, maybe up to 30 or 40%. But it really kind of depends on the individual tax lien. But with most of those properties, you're looking at a few years worth of delinquent tax liens. So essentially, that's kind of how tax lien certificates work, how the process works. It's a great investment strategy. It gives you that high interest rate return backed by real estate. So you're talking about investment opportunity where you're earning a guaranteed return backed by real property. I mean, I can't. That's the reason, when me and Shake first heard about tax lien investing, when I was a real estate agent, my broker, as I mentioned, invited me out. And, we said, well, what was this, and then we started, purchasing books and finding it. And there wasn't really much information about it. Some of the county websites were really just it was kind of the start of county websites. And so, we could find a little bit of information here and there, and there was some infomercial or whatever that may have had some information. So we researched everything we could about it, and that's really kind of how we got involved. We thought, my goodness, this is just such an incredible investment opportunity. We need to find more about it, and it really is. We have investors that we're able to take their 401k accounts and move those over into a self-directed IRA account or something like that, and suddenly take that money and start investing it into secondary liens. So these are liens that we've actually already gone through, research, purchased through the secondary market, and have available to our students. So we'll go through how that works as well here in a little bit. So what are tax deeds? Well, the tax deed states have the same objectives as tax lien states. What they want to do is they want to collect delinquent property taxes. But what tax deeds usually do, or tax deed counties do, is they wait until the redemption period is passed, and then they go through and foreclose on the property. So once the county forecloses on the property, they're going to create what we call a tax deed or a quitclaim deed. And so they're going to go ahead and issue a deed on the property and make that deed available through the auction process. So after they create this tax deed, the county is going to essentially offer it to the public auction. So it's usually going to start at just the delinquent taxes. Now, there is a few exceptions to that, but most places in the country, the opening bid starts at delinquent taxes. So that opening bid amount could start anywhere from 5% up as high as 50% in some cases. Like, for example, a homestead property in Florida, and it's going to be a very specific property. Homestead is not the majority, it's the minority of tax certificates. But in that type of scenario, homestead property is going to start at the tax deed auction at 50% of assessed value. Now, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because Florida is a unique state. And if we have some time, I'll kind of go through and answer any questions. If I get a chance, I'll kind of explain how Florida works. But, Florida offers both tax liens and tax deeds. And so, with the way that works is with the tax lien certificate, they have a tax lien system where they offer these tax liens, and then once that tax lien has passed a redemption period that is 2 years, then essentially that lien holder can foreclose on the property by filling out what's called a deed application with the county. So they fill out this deed application, and they're able to go ahead and foreclose on the property. And so really, and then foreclose on the property, and then of course that property is going to be auctioned off at a tax deed sale. So they take, the county does the foreclosure, and then offers the property to deed sale, and then whoever buys that property to deed sale is going to go ahead and pay off the tax and certificate owner. And if nobody buys it, then the tax deed will become the lien holders. So, in that scenario, if you're interested in really mostly getting a high interest rate return, and you really don't want to deal with a ton of property, and you also don't want to have to go through the foreclosure process on your own, then a state like Florida or one of these states where they go through the process of doing the foreclosure for you is something we'd look at. Look at helping you get started with if you were a member. So essentially, tax deeds are a form of property deed. Getting a little bit sidetracked. So when you're attending the auction, you're buying these tax deeds. You're buying these properties just outright. So it's really a pretty sweet opportunity. This is where you have a chance to buy property anywhere from 10 cents to 50 cents on the dollar. And so, in some markets, picking up a property for 50 cents on the dollar, even though that would be at the high end or the higher end of the spectrum, that would still be a huge opportunity in that particular market because, picking up a property for 95 cents on the dollar would be considered a huge deal because offers are going up. There's a lot of places in a lot of areas where the real estate market is rebounding. And so really now is the time, if that be tax and certificates or tax deeds, take advantage of these different things that are taking place. So let's go through the tax deed cycle real quick. Tax deeds, essentially, kind of the way the tax deed system works is the county has the power to foreclose. So they go through this judicial foreclosure process after the redemption period is expired. So these tax deed states, what they do is instead of issuing liens on properties, they just go ahead and foreclose on the property once the redemption period is passed. So that's usually going to be anywhere between 2 to 5 years, depending on the state. It's usually probably on the further end of that, between 3 to 5 years. And so most tax deed states will have, that they'll just keep sending out notices to the property, but they're just going to kind of hold that debt until that redemption period is passed, and then they go ahead and foreclose on the property and offer that property up itself. So essentially, the property is auctioned off to investors at the tax deed auction. So this is where we have the opportunity to purchase tax deeds. Is through these different states that just wait, foreclose on the property, so you don't have to worry about the foreclosure. So if you're interested in acquiring property or you want to be a real estate investor, well, then there's really not a better way, in my opinion, for acquiring real estate than through tax deeds. I first got involved in real estate as a real estate agent in 1999. But really, even before that, my dad was a general contractor, so I grew up around real estate, really my whole life, and I never saw an opportunity. In fact, it's funny, my dad's getting involved in tax sale investing now after so many years, just because, kind of opened up to the opportunity and seeing the great opportunity. So we're helping him go out there and purchase tax deed property. So it's really just an awesome opportunity to buy real estate at a fraction of its value in many markets across the country. So essentially, whoever is willing to go to the auction and pay those fees will become the new property owner. Now, there is a bidding process that will take place at the auction. So, the starting bid may be $1,300, but maybe it sells for $10,000. But maybe it's a $60,000 single-family home in good condition. So it's totally worth the $10,000 to buy the property because there's a huge amount of profit in the property. And so that's really kind of how the tax deed system works. In most places in the country, it's going to range anywhere between 10 to 50%. Few cases a year we'll see it where a few properties have gone higher than that. And that's just because there's two competitive bidders. It's something we teach to our members about not becoming an emotional bidder. These are all different things that essentially we're going to go through and we teach as we teach our members the process of tax sale investing, and as they go through our home study course, they learn to avoid. And so there is different things that you got to watch out for when you're a tax sale investor. But once you become educated, then it's really like a whole new world opens up to you as far as investing is concerned, because suddenly you can acquire real estate at lower prices than anyone you're going to meet. It really is kind of a secret that it's not a secret because everyone kind of knows about it, but very few people really know how to take advantage of it. And so let's go ahead and quickly talk about redemption deeds. Really, redemption deeds are similar to tax liens and tax deeds, but they're kind of a hybrid of both. Redemption deeds are tax deeds that will have a redemption period attached to it. So these redemption deeds will have redemption periods that range usually from 2 months on the low end, but usually it's going to be 6 months to a year. In some cases, it'll be 2 years. In the case of homestead properties in Texas, and so every other property in Texas is going to be essentially a 6-month redemption period. And so if you purchase some type of rental or second home or piece of land or commercial property, anything like that, essentially you're looking at a 6-month redemption period. And so what redemption deeds do is they have these redemption periods, but just like a tax lien certificate, they offer a return. So they meaning that even though you're getting the deed to the property, essentially that property owner still has a time frame to pay you back. So in the case of Texas, you'll actually be extended ownership rights. So you could move in the property, you could rent the property out. You're just not going to want to spend a ton of money fixing up the property or doing anything like that during that redemption period, because essentially that property owner still has the time frame to pay you back. So when you're looking at redemption deeds, you're really looking at it more like a tax deed investor, because you're going to have a way higher chance of 50% or more in a lot of cases of actually acquiring that property. Because, once it's gone through these redemption deed processes, essentially, if the property owner doesn't pay back usually in a pretty short period of time, then they're going to lose any interest in the property. But also, many times they're going to issue deeds on the property. So you may actually receive a deed in the mail, but the county's not going to record that deed or do the full recording of the deed until after that redemption period is passed. Also, one thing that makes redemption deeds unique versus a tax lien certificate is a tax lien, pays out an interest rate over a year period, an annual period. What many redemption deed states do is they actually offer a penalty return instead of an interest rate return, which means that, let's say we're talking about Texas, for example, they offer a 25% return. So if you were to purchase a redemption deed at the auction, and they have auctions every single month, on the first Tuesday of the month, you go to the auction and you purchase one of these. Let's say you purchased a deed on a nice building lot or something like that, and the property owner comes in and pays you off the very next day, you're going to get a 25% return. If they come and pay you off 5 months and 28 days later, and they have 2 days before it becomes 6 months, then you're going to get a 25% return. So hopefully that makes sense. Essentially, you're going to be getting your 25% regardless of when that tax deed redeems. So if the property owner does redeem, then you're incentivized at usually a higher interest rate return on that property. But you're also going to have a higher chance of actually becoming the property's owner. So really there's 4 ways to invest. The first way is going to be through what we call a live auction. And the second way is going to be through what we call an online auction. And then the fourth way is through over-the-counter. And then the fourth, getting ahead of myself. The first way is through live auctions. Second way is through online auctions. Third way is through over-the-counter. And then fourth way is through the secondary market. So let's go ahead and go through it and talk about each one of these. One thing I quickly want to do is I don't have time, try to go through all this information to look at all the messages. Let me go ahead and see. Okay, sounds like a lot of people. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them. Looks like most people have good quality, but somebody says they have bad quality. For some reason you have bad quality, you may just want to go ahead and log out and log back in, and that should help. So let's go through and let's start talking about each one of these different strategies. Strategy number 1, the live county auction. Essentially, the live auctions are the oldest, most common method to conduct tax sales. In fact, one of Wyatt Earp's jobs was handling the tax foreclosure sales for his particular county and area. So every state in the country is going to conduct some type of live auction. So regardless if they're tax lien states, they're tax deed states, redemption deed states, most states are going to have some type of live auction, meaning at the county courthouse. So you're heading down to the county courthouse and you're participating in the auction live. And so with live auctions, most of us are going to be living in some state that have some type of live auction. So we always recommend, even if you don't plan on investing in that particular state, we always recommend going out and attending the sale, because that's going to give you a huge opportunity to go through the process and to find out how the auction works and to see it in person. That's what was so amazing to me and Shane as we first started attending auctions. We first started attending auctions. I think our first 4 or 5 auctions, we didn't even buy anything. We were just there to learn. We were there just to find out how this worked. And as we attended different auctions in different areas in different states, we started getting a better idea of how this whole process worked. And so, attending that auction is really going to be an educational experience for you, a free educational experience for you, essentially, to go and see how this tax sale system works. And so, that's kind of what live auctions are, and that's how it works. And so you're just going to go attend the sale. There's several different bidding systems that we go through and teach our members about, and how each one of those bidding systems work, and how you're going to use those systems to essentially bid up the price of the property, or in the case of tax and certificates, you may be bidding down the interest rate. Each one of these investments are going to have some type of bidding method they're going to use to conduct the sale. And so that's how the live auction system works. So you're just going to go down there in person and attend the sale. And so it's just going to be like any other type of live auction that you've been to. Very, very similar, except for they're going to be auctioning off tax and certificates or deeds or something like that. The second strategy is online auctions. Online auctions were something that me and Shane, kind of saw. We saw the change from just having all of the states live auction and information pretty hard to find, to online auctions, and kind of the change that took place throughout that time frame. And so online auctions has really kind of opened up the market to a lot of different investors. And so really what an online auction is exactly that. It's like an eBay auction or something like that, where you have the opportunity to purchase taxes and deeds online. So most online auctions have websites or web pages that are completely dedicated to their online auction. So what these online auction sites do is they try to provide you with as much information as possible. At least most of them seem to be pretty good about it. So they're going to have all of the information, tutorials, forms, dates, auction list. All that information is going to be available online. What also makes online auctions unique is that a lot of times they're going to have links directly to the property records. So as you're going through and reviewing that list, you can actually click on the link and review the property records. That's going to connect you directly to the county records so that you can start reviewing those to see if it's going to be a good investment. And some of these counties even include practice auctions. So you can go through and participate and practice in the auction before actually participating in the auction. That way you get a feel of actually how the auction process works. And so there's several different large auction providers and that provide many different states online auctions. So, online auctions are something that it's just spreading across the country, and there's just going to be more and more opportunity to participate in online auctions. Buyer strategy number 3 is over-the-counter investing. And so over-the-counter investing is really the process of purchasing tax liens or deeds that were offered at the original sale but did not sell. So it can also be referred to as assignment purchasing or OTC investing. So these are tax liens, tax deeds that are available to purchase directly from the county after the sale. In fact, I have to put redemption deeds in there as well because Texas has what's called struck-off deeds. So if you can't attend the auction in Texas, you can actually go through and review those struck-off deeds and find good properties and actually to purchase them through the struck-off lists. And that's something we provide our members on our website. So these tax deeds, they can be purchased at the highest interest rate return or the lowest possible price because essentially they're going to be offered directly from the county. So I talked a little bit about the bidding systems, and there's just so much information with tax lien investment. We just don't have time to go through it in one day. But with tax lien investing, you may be bidding down that interest rate. So if you have somebody who's really interested in that property, well, then they may be willing to really bid down that interest rate because of their ego, because of for whatever reason they want that property. They may be willing to bid down that interest rate lower than you're willing to go. So with over-the-counter investing, you're getting the highest interest rate return. So if we're talking about an 18% interest rate, you're getting that property for 18%. With over-the-counter deeds, they can usually be purchased for only the back tax amount. So essentially, you just pay the back tax amount, and you can acquire the property. In addition with that, you can also there's also states out there that'll take less than taxes owed. So they may have some of these properties that have been sitting on these lists that haven't sold for a long time just because nobody knows about it. And so with these type of properties, you can actually submit offers for less than taxes owed. And so both those properties that you saw from the different states that we showed earlier were purchased in areas where we were able to purchase them for less than taxes owed. And so the taxes on those properties ranged from $1,500 to about $2,500 to $3,000 in property taxes, but we were able to purchase them for less than that because the county has excess inventory. And so it's just a matter of finding those gems among bad inventory as well, because there's going to be all different types of property. That's one thing you're going to notice as you start reviewing over-the-counter list, is that you're going to find, or really any list, is you're going to find all different types of property. We have seen every kind of property you can imagine, from large golf courses to skyscrapers or huge office buildings to every type of home. You name it, and it's been offered at the tax sale at one point or another. And so as far as these type of properties, you just don't know what type of property you're going to find. And also one thing to mention with tax sale investing as well is with tax sale investing, you're looking at this as an investor. So it's not something where you can say in every single market, well, I want to purchase a home here. So, like, for example, I live in Utah. And so, if I said, I want to purchase a home in Park City, on this road, and I want it to be this type of home, I'm not going to be able to do that through the tax sale because there's probably not going to be that kind of property in Utah come up for a tax sale. A lot of people pay their property taxes here. They have a long period. So the chances of getting that type of property is probably not something I'm going to happen. So, when we're looking at tax on investing in general, we're looking at this from a total investment standpoint, and from an investor, through an investor's eyes. And so through that point, you're going to be able to purchase all these different types of properties that are available, but you can't be real specific in some cases with what type of property you want, because the property, we don't know what type of properties. There's just different type of properties that come up for sale. So that the inventory or the county inventory can constantly change with what different types of properties are available. What we're looking for is properties that are profitable. And if those properties are profitable, we don't care what type of property it is, as long as we can make money on it. And that goes for tax liens and tax deeds. Okay. One quick thing to mention as well is some county even offer over-the-counter tax liens online. So the fourth strategy is the secondary market. And this is something that's in some form or another has been around for a while, but really it's something that we've got involved with just really over the last little bit. And so before we go into the secondary market, I think it's important to point out the differences or what the secondary versus the primary market is. And so what the primary market is a term used for purchasing tax liens and deeds directly from the local government. So either at the live auction or over the counter. And so that's essentially what the primary auction is. When you purchase a tax lien or tax deed from the local government, through the county, through the city, essentially you're purchasing that over the counter. The secondary market is a term used to describe purchasing tax liens or deeds from a company or private seller after they have already been purchased from the local government. So essentially these tax liens have already been purchased on the primary market by an initial investor, and you're buying that tax lien or tax deed from the investor, from the company, or from the seller. So, that's essentially the secondary market is the reselling of tax liens and tax deeds. And there's a lot of reasons why essentially the secondary market can exist, especially on the tax lien side of it. But there's also a great opportunity on the tax deed side of it as well. So we're going to go ahead and get into kind of exactly what secondary market investing is. So large financial institutions have been investing in tax lien certificates for literally decades. Large banks like Wells Fargo, Citibank have spent hundreds of millions of dollars purchasing these tax liens from county governments. And so what they do is these large banks have been, really dominating a lot of the tax lien market for years, especially in some of the states that kind of the online auction format has changed that a little bit, because back in the day, you could go to some of these big tax lien auctions, let's say like Maricopa County, Arizona, or some of these big counties in Florida, and you would have literally, the bank would have 20 or 30 or 40 or even 100 different people there, essentially working for them, purchasing tax liens and deeds. So essentially, that was just Shay just texted me, so just had something come up, and everything's okay. So that's good to hear. Everything's going to be all right. So that's good to hear. So at least we know that. So as far as these secondary tax liens, so these large banks have been purchasing them for quite a few decades. In fact, some counties will even sell their entire inventory to institutional bidders or institutional investors like bank and hedge funds. And so years ago, all of these different tax lien certificates would be purchased by all of these large banks, and they still do it to a degree. In fact, there's certain states and counties and cities that will sell their entire batch of tax lien certificates to one of these banks. So, they'll sell every tax lien to one investor, to one bank, to one hedge fund. And so unless you have, $30 billion to purchase all the tax liens within, Hartford County, Connecticut, or something like that, you're not going to be able to participate in those particular auctions unless you're purchasing tax liens on the secondary market. And so what happens is the bank purchases these tax liens, but banks aren't interested in acquiring property. The reason the banks have been buying these tax liens for years is not to acquire property. The only reason they buy these tax liens is to earn interest rate returns. So that's really their most important thing, is they're interested in earning interest. They're not interested in acquiring property. And so what the banks do is they'll have these tax liens that go past the redemption period. So let's say they have $100,000 worth of tax liens, just using that for number's sake, and 90,000 of those tax liens of their investment money in tax liens, or 100 tax liens, let's say 90 of those tax liens, to make the numbers easier, are paid off. So, most of the tax liens have already paid off within the redemption period. They don't want to lose their property. They were 6 months late, or 1 year late, or 18 months later, whatever that is, but they paid off before it went to foreclosure. The bank has this group of leftover tax liens that may be partway into the redemption period, or maybe even past the redemption period. So banks, what they like to do is they like to hold on to those tax liens for a couple of years. And once it's been a couple of years, they like to get rid of that investment because they're not interested in acquiring property. The last thing the bank wants to do is have stories and newspaper articles and things, blogs and all that kind of stuff, talking about how they're taking property away through government auctions, how they're essentially not only doing the mortgage, but then they're trying to take the property through tax certificates or something like that. That's not something they're interested in doing. They're really interested in those high interest rate returns. And so what the banks are willing to do is they're willing to sell that remaining inventory of tax and certificates, essentially wanting to get out of it. In fact, occasionally we'll have investors that approach us as well that essentially, maybe they spent, they got into tax lien investing a few years ago and spent, a few $100,000, but they have this group of tax liens that are all foreclosure ready, but they don't want to go through the foreclosure process because, for whatever reason. Well, at that point, those are going to be secondary liens as well. We can purchase those tax and certificates and essentially offer them to our students or to our members. So the bank's goal is to essentially earn interest rate. Their goal is not to acquire property, so they're willing to sell these excess tax and certificates, and that's really where we've set up different relationships with different investors, different banks, hedge funds, different scenario, situations like that, where we have these different connections, where we can actually, team up and purchase these tax and certificates, and then be able to offer them to our different members. So, what are the benefits of secondary liens? Well, first of all, you're going to avoid the auction. You're not going to be competing with other bidders. Essentially, you're able to purchase these tax and certificates without attending any auction or dealing with anything like that. Also, these tax liens have been pre-screened. So, these tax liens have actually been purchased or reviewed, and purchased personally or by me and Shade's team, or many of them by us ourselves. So we've gone through the process of researching these tax liens and pre-screening these tax liens, and essentially have gone through the process of making sure that these are good investments. We're not going to go out there and purchase secondary liens that are going to be a bad investment. In fact, that was something that kept us out of the secondary market for almost a decade, is there was different companies that had sprung up that were offering secondary tax liens or secondary tax deeds. And essentially what they were doing is they were buying the bottom of the barrel. So after the hedge funds had come into the big banks, you say we have a big bank and hedge fund comes into the big bank and buys all their tax certificates. They go through all their taxes and they say, okay, well, we like 50% of them, and 50% of them are junk. 50% of them are worthless properties or what we like to call toxic tax liens. And we talk about that, about how to avoid toxic tax liens. And so essentially, they'll purchase all of their good tax liens, and the bank's sitting on this 50%, 50% of their inventory that are these toxic liens or these toxic deeds or toxic properties. And so what essentially happens is some of these different companies sprung up and sold those bad investments, those high-risk investments to investors. And so, some properties were better, or some liens were worse than others, and some were, maybe borderline okay. But there was a lot of tax lien certificates that were at the bottom of the barrel. Things that we could never recommend, that I would never recommend for any of the investors that I ever worked with, that we ever worked with. And so, really, the secondary market is kind of a new opportunity. Also, many times these tax liens are going to be foreclosure ready, which means they're already going to be past the redemption period. You're also going to have the ability to purchase several different tax liens at one time. So that's where we can actually come in and we have our members work with a portfolio manager. And they'll be able to put together a portfolio for our member of different inventory that we have. And so we're constantly on the move, purchasing more inventory. In fact, we just can't buy enough inventory, even for the limited amount of students that we're working with. And so there's just a huge opportunity on the secondary market, and we're looking at tax and certificates. So we're going through and reviewing these tax liens and purchasing these tax liens through several different avenues, and they're essentially able to offer them to our investors where they can go ahead and purchase these pre-spring tax liens. This also works really well for investors that have any type of retirement accounts that aren't earning very good money, or investors that have different types of self-directed accounts. With self-directed accounts, you can shift all of those funds over into a self-directed account and invest them directly in tax certificates. And that money just keeps going back into the system, and it just keeps growing for you at a higher rate that you're going to find in most places. And then think, what if you got a property? Now suddenly you acquired a property for a small percentage of its value, and turn around and sold it, and all that money goes back into that account. And so you're able to build that account at a high rate. That's something that a lot of our members are looking at or starting or taking advantage of. So what are secondary tax deeds? Well, in the past, secondary tax deeds weren't available to most investors. The big banks didn't really focus on tax deeds. They're only interested on tax deed liens, and so you had different types of hedge funds and private investors and things like that would purchase big bulks of tax deeds, but you didn't have these big banks that were purchasing them. And as I mentioned, there were a couple companies that offered secondary deeds, but they were shut down shortly after because they were selling junk property. So they were, inflating the value of the property. So maybe it was a 3,000 building lot that they sold for $3,000, but they told the investor that it was worth $10,000 or something like that. Just shady individuals, and there's a reason why, they were shut down. And so, really, the only way to purchase secondary deeds was if you were purchasing them from another investor. So, you knew Bob. Bob attended tax sales. Bob had some extra deeds he wanted to get rid of, so he sold them to you at a certain amount over his cost, and still a ton of money for you to make on those properties. So you purchased those properties from him because he had already done all the work of attending the auction, of researching the property and determining the value and all that stuff that you would have to go through. And there's still a huge amount of profit that you can turn around and sell that property for. So that was really kind of the process of how over-the-counter deeds work, is that it wasn't really a huge process, except for a couple of different companies that sprung up and sold some junk for a bit. There really wasn't a huge opportunity to purchase secondary deeds. And that's really where over the last couple of months, me and Shade have spent time and been working towards making that possible for our students, where we could go through and we could research all of these different markets that have these different tax deeds and start purchasing them and making them available to our members. So as far as the benefits, really the biggest benefit is the time spent reviewing tax sale lists, researching property, attending the auctions, reviewing lists, sending in and bidding against other bidders. For every property we win, we may lose other properties at the auction because they go higher than we want. Essentially, each one of these properties have been pre-screened. And we've also made sure that we're purchasing these properties at an amount that we can turn around and sell them to our members with huge amounts of profitability. Essentially, we're more interested in your profit than we're interested in our own. We are interested in profit, obviously, because we're going through and doing a huge amount of work. We've got to pay, the staff that we're going to be hiring to help us do it. Because, me and Shade have been trying to do it for the last 6 months, and that's we just no longer going to be able to do it on our own. There's just too much opportunity, and we have too much of a demand for me and Shade just to keep trying to do everything ourselves. And so, we're gonna have to be building the staff around us to be able to go out there and find all of these different properties, and then each one will be approved by Shade and myself. As far as the tax deed properties, these tax deed properties, so we'll be going through it and researching them and finding them, and really looking at the markets where we can purchase the very best properties for our students, because our goal with the secondary market is to have you go out and make money on that property and double or triple your profit, and then be able to come back and reinvest, so that we're just able to really go out there because we have the tools, the ability, the knowledge, the research, and the staff to be able to go out there and purchase properties all across the country in all of these different tax sale markets that maybe our members aren't able to, or most investors aren't able to. And then be able to offer them to our members where they can go out there and make a huge amount of money for it. So we've kind of been, test piloting it over the last couple of months, working with some of our investors, and have just started having huge success. And so, you saw some of the properties that we've purchased. We've purchased over 50 properties over the last 10 days, a couple of weeks, and we're looking to, we're going to be purchasing another 50, 100 properties over the next 2 weeks. So there's a huge amount of opportunity for our members to purchase these secondary deeds, and it's really never been something that's never really been done before. Not like where we're doing it. I mean, really, our whole goal is for a member for life. Somebody that we can just continue helping them build their real estate portfolio. The only reason me and Shade did this, in fact, we got out of the business, quit working with seminar companies, and shut down our old company in 2015. Really because we were just tired of the seminar industry. We were tired of dealing with people that didn't keep their word, and didn't keep their word to their students as well, or to their members. What's most important to me in Shade was always taking care of our students, making sure that they had everything that they had. And with the seminar industry or the training industry, it's nearly impossible to have an A+ rated company with the DBB without paying them money. And me and Shade were able to never do anything as far as paying money or fees or anything like that. We were able to have an A+ rated company because, we had a company that was around for 8 to 10 years, and never had a complaint against it, and worked with over 60,000 students, because we made sure that we always gave our members everything we had, everything to help them be successful. So if they didn't go out there and take success, it was really important. It was really something. It was really on their. It was on them. But with the secondary market, now we have the opportunity, because many times there's that buying process, that finding process is the scariest thing for investors, or the thing that's holding a lot of investors back. They want to be able to purchase tax liens and tax deeds, but that finding process is just too overwhelming. They want to go through the selling process. They don't want to waste their time looking and researching and trying to participate and go to auction. They want to buy these properties for a discount and then be able to turn around and sell them. And so that's what we're looking to provide. We could probably make a lot more money just by getting a hedge fund together and going out and just buying these properties and selling them on the open market. In fact, we could probably make 3 or 4 times more money, not have to deal with any students, not have to deal with questions, not have to deal with anything like that, and just essentially just by real estate investing. But in talking about it, and that's really kind of what kind of changed in when we decided in 2016 to start training members again, was really this ability to just the love of training, essentially. So, there's a huge amount of secondary liens. Essentially, each one of our members are going to be working with the portfolio manager. And so what they're able to do is they are able to work directly with our investor and with our member, and it gives them the opportunity to invest in the secondary market through us. So we're going through and we're purchasing tax liens and deeds. Each one of our members are going to be assigned a portfolio manager to work with personally, and the portfolio manager is going to be able to help them and determine what they need, determine their goals, and then go through our inventory and find the best tax liens and tax deeds for them to purchase. So we're almost done here. I appreciate you guys spending all this time with us today. It looks like almost all of us almost everybody has stayed on, so I appreciate that. One thing, in fact, it's funny, we were talking with one of my brother's friends last night who's really interested in this, and he said to me, and we hear this all the time, it just sounds too good to be true. And so, if it sounds too good to be true, why isn't everyone doing this? And the truth of the matter is, banks, hedge funds, real estate companies, smart private investors, big money investors have been investing in tax liens for decades. So there is people doing it. There is people taking advantage of it. But even though it's been talked about for years, in fact, for over a decade, there was an infomercial that played on every single, a dozen different channels, every single night, that was just blasting about tax liens and deeds or tax sale investing or whatever, is that there's 50 states, and each state has their own laws governing tax sales. And there's 3,300 counties, and it's a matter of going through and researching county records and researching property records. And so it's a process that most investors, even real estate investors, may not know how to do. Or even though we'll talk to people that have been in the real estate industry for 30 years, but they really don't have any understanding of what tax sale investing is. They could tell you all kinds of things about the real estate industry. They've been doing massive deals, but they don't understand how this tax sale system works. And it's because I think it probably has to do with the fact that the government's involved, that it's a government auction, and that probably adds to it. Also, most people are unwilling to invest the time to become a successful investor. That's really what it comes down to. It's going through and researching the properties and doing the due diligence and checking for red flags and going through this process. So even though you're buying a property for $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is for a small portion of the property's value, or you're purchasing tax liens, earning high interest rate return, there's essentially a process that you're going to have to go through, an education process, so that you can go out and do this. Now, essentially what we've done is we've broken down this process so that it becomes easier, so that you are able to pick an individual state, pick an investor profile type. The investor profile type has a list of states, pick an individual state, and then from there research the individual county list and start buying property within those individual counties. Or with the secondary market, we're able to determine what you need and then go through our inventory and put together a portfolio for you. And as we get new inventory in, your portfolio manager said, okay, well, this is what Jim's looking for. And so, once we get some of those properties that come in, we're going to be able to go ahead and I'm going to hold those for you, essentially, because you'll have your portfolio, which is the manager that's essentially going to be looking out for you and helping you build that real estate portfolio. Our goal is to continue to help these members go out there and create a huge amount of income, either through residual income, through tax and certificates, through real estate investing, through tax deeds. Also, one reason everyone's not doing is most of people are too afraid to take charge of their financial future in their investments. They're willing to continue to let their financial planner or their stockbroker, and I don't know, discourage anyone like that. I mean, doing their best, at least most of them are. Essentially, they'd rather lose money than take charge of their own money and go out there and make a high interest rate return. And so, there's always this kind of risk of, well, what if this gets saturated? What if it just becomes too hard to invest it? And that's always a worry. We've been involved in it for over 15 years now, and it still hasn't happened yet. So there's still more opportunity than there is investors, that is for sure. And that's part of the reason why we're going into this new avenue, where we're going to be investing in the secondary tax deeds as well. So just have a couple more things, and then we'll answer a couple questions, and we'll go ahead and call it. I've been on the phone for quite a while, an hour and a half already. So who is TaxSaleSupport.com? Well, in 2015, me and Shay decided to quit working with seminar companies. And a lot of things changed kind of within that period between 2013, 2014, 2015. A lot of the big companies were going out of business, were essentially imploding. They were so busy making money, and essentially many different ones went out of business. So some of the big companies that we worked with went out of business, other ones were dropping, and the seminar industry was kind of changing, and it really hasn't, I don't think it's completely kind of rebounded, or there's nobody that's really kind of doing something unique. There's a couple of people out there that are still big names, that are real estate investors, that are still doing Robert Kiyosaki, people like that, that are still having their seminars, but there's really not the seminar industry completely changed, and it probably was a good thing, because most of these companies were mostly interested in making profit and making money, which is important, but they weren't interested in making sure that their students were taken care of. And that's how we were able to work with the seminar industry for that long, and able to maintain our A+ rating. Our A+ rating was because even though they were selling our program, essentially they were selling our program for anywhere between $2,000 to $4,000, and that was just for our home study kits. What they do is they take our 5-step, our 5-course manual and make it look good and sell it for anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 with a year's worth of training of our website. So that includes our list and our weekly webinars and everything that's involved in our training. In addition with that, they'd also have hotline support as well. So that was, they would sell those programs between $2,000 to $4,000, and we'd essentially get about 4 or 5% of that. and probably even quite a bit less if I'm actually going over the numbers. But we were able to have huge accounts with a lot of these companies, work with a ton of students, and so for us, it was a great opportunity. We had an opportunity to work with a lot of different investors in a lot of different unique situations and help a lot of people, make money and learn about tax and indeed investing. But, as the industry changed and we really decided to quit working with the seminar companies, and we kind of shut down the business altogether and just kind of took a year off, did a lot of personal investing, helped family get invested, just did some different things. And then really about May 2016, we decided to start a new training company, investment company, a new training company, and then, of course, include the secondary tax liens and deeds as well. And so we decided that, we no longer wanted to work with the seminar companies. In fact, we've had different seminar companies that have approached us and have wanted us to essentially private label our programs again, and it's just a road we're not going to go down again. Even though there may be reasons why we should do that, it's just something we're not going to do. Really, what we're interested in doing is just providing our training directly to members online. And so we created Tax Sale Support to offer our home study course, our auction list, our training libraries, our live webinars, and then, of course, our secondary liens and deeds, this new system that we're creating to our members. And so that's really what Tax Sale Support is. That's what me and Shade are doing now, or have done over the last 6 months. It's just a testimonial. Let's get that. So we're in the process of making some big changes to our training and also to our secondary market program. So we've been working hard, as I mentioned before, to purchase these over-the-counter tax deeds and attend tax deed auctions, purchase different tax deeds in different states for our students and our members to be able to purchase. And so we've secured funding to purchase really an unlimited amount of, not unlimited, but to purchase hundreds of more than we're going to need, or at least enough to hopefully that we're going to need to purchase these different tax deed properties. So we're going to, in addition to our secondary liens. So we've already had funding and been purchasing all of these secondary liens for our members for the last, 6-8 months or so. But over the last couple of months, we've started implementing and including secondary deeds as well. And so now we've kind of secured it, figured out our systems, and put together our system in place to go out there and purchase these over-the-counter tax deeds, purchase these tax deeds through the auctions that we can essentially offer to our members in addition to our tax and certificates. And so because of that, we're going to be rolling out some new programs within the next couple of weeks to our members. You'll see these changes on taxsalesupport.com. You'll also probably see the changes on Secrets of Tax and Investing as well, as we're implementing different changes over the next couple of months. But because of all of these added tools and value, we're also going to be raising the cost of membership. It's just really a reality. It's something that we have to do, just based on the way that it works. So as far as the investment requirements of becoming a member, there's really 3 requirements that we ask for. First, we ask that you become educated. Most mistakes can be avoided with understanding how the tax sale process works. If you're willing to go through and do due diligence and do research and make sure you read the auction rules and just go through the process that we lay out in our program on how to do, then you're going to be educated. Most of our students are the most educated people that ever attend the auction. In fact, we've had dozens and dozens of success stories of students that have said that and said, man, I was the smartest person about tax sale investing there at the auction. I knew more about it than anyone else. I was more prepared. Man, I was the star of the show. I was the star of the auction. And there was reason for that because they had done their due diligence. They had went through the correct steps and determined which properties, knew how much they were going to bid, and then obviously had success in the auction because of it. The second thing we ask for our members is to think outside the box, because investing in tax sale investing in tax sales it's important to possess an investor mindset. You know, it was something that I was talking to my mom a little bit about the other day as far as investing in trailers. I said, you know, a trailer may or may not be something that you want to live in, or you know that you want that to be your retirement home. But you know, there's a lot of people across the country that live in trailers, and that's their home, and they love that home, and they treat that home great. And so, you know, even though you may not want to live there, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad investment. I use the same example as far as even in areas that may be areas that are a little bit higher crime, or maybe a little bit more rougher areas than maybe would want to necessarily live in. I said it's all about price. You know, if we can buy that property that's even in a little bit rougher neighborhood, and we're buying it for, you know, $100, and it's worth $10,000, and we can sell it, you know, quickly to an investor within that area, within that neighborhood for, you know, $2 or $3 grand, then that's a good investment. Even though we maybe never live in that area, or, you know, that's still going to be a good investment. Even if we maybe never visit that area, it still could be a good investment because we can do most of this information, most of this sale information online. The third thing we ask for our investors to is to essentially roll up their sleeves. You know, tax sale investing is you know, takes work. The secondary market makes it a ton easier because we're doing all of that front-end work. All you're doing is essentially doing the back-end work. You know, with tax and certificates, you're really just sitting on the tax lien or starting the foreclosure process. With tax deed investing, of course, you're going through and doing the selling process. But either way, it's going to take work. It's going to take education. It's going to take you thinking outside the box. And so those are essentially the three things that we ask of our members. So how can I become a member of TaxSaleSupport.com? Well, for a limited time before we roll out the new membership program, we've reduced the membership on our website from $39 a month down to $29 a month. And we also reduced our yearly membership from $399 down to $299 for the full year. Now, guys, this is just going to be for a limited time because over the next couple of weeks, months, we're going to be rolling out this new membership program. And because of these secondary opportunities, these new tools, training webinars, things that we're going to be offering to our members, we're going to have to raise the cost of our membership. And so we're looking around the $50 to $60 price point for around $500 for the yearly membership. And so, you know, really right now is the time to take advantage of this $29 monthly offer or the $299 full year offer, because as we go through and make all of these changes, even though the price is going to increase, you know, you are still going to be able to take all of the advantages. So this is really a chance for, you know, essentially these are going to be our original people, because, you know, before me and Shade start working with all of these other investors and kind of take this to a new level and, you know, and bring in help, you know, these people that signed up beforehand are kind of going to be our original group. And so they're going to be a special group for us as well, for me and Shade as well, because these were the people, these were the investors that found us when we just started kind of putting up our YouTube videos and put up a couple of new websites, and people started, you know, coming in and started asking questions and wanted to become members. And so essentially that's kind of what's going on. You'll start to see those changes on our websites over the next month or so. You'll start seeing the different things going on social media about the different things that we're doing. And so really now is the best time to sign up. Also, anyone that signs up over this Easter weekend, we're going to go ahead and either Shade or myself is going to do a 20-minute strategy session with you. So all of our members can get a strategy session from their portfolio manager, but it's not something that me and Shade offer to just a basic membership. And so that's something that we're going to be doing over this is for anyone who signs up over this weekend. Essentially, all you got to do is go to taxdeedsupport.com. You'll see the list of everything that's included in membership. You'll see all of the different tools. You can spend some time going through and reviewing some of those different tools, and then essentially you can click on there to register. So, there's going to be some different things, a lot of things changing over the next couple of months as we really need to expand and just kind of change, the way the last 6 months or so, 8 months, year or so, me and Shade have just kind of been doing this, as a side project. Not a side project, it's a full-time job, but more as kind of as a mom-and-pop shop, I guess you could say. We're just kind of, starting to go through the process and make sure this is something that we want to do. And I think we found the system and some things that we put together to really take our membership and our training and our investors to a whole new level. I mean, our success depends on our students and our members' success. Especially when it comes to the different training and programs that we offer, the success stories. Me and Shade have literally hundreds of success stories that we've generated over the years. We can go through and post success story after success story because we've helped a lot of different people purchase tax sale certificates. And so really I think that this is an awesome opportunity. I really don't think you're going to find a better tax sale program. And also with that offer, that comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee because me and Shade aren't worried. We've had this gone up for 8 months, and we only had one person who asked for their money back, and they asked for their money back within an hour of purchasing, and essentially they just downloaded the programs and the materials, and then asked for their money back, which is fine. We're not going to fight with anyone, but we haven't had anyone else ask us for their money back. So, because really they see the value of being a member of our program. So, we really appreciate everyone answering, everyone being here on the line today. Hopefully you've learned a little bit. If you're interested in becoming a member, go to taxdeedsupport.com, sign up before we end up having to raise the price. And then also, anyone that signs up either today or tomorrow, we're going to go ahead and they're going to get a phone call, strategy call from me and Shade personally, and kind of put together a plan for you to get started and help point you in the right direction. So that's going to be a pretty huge, unique opportunity to talk with each one of us personally. So again, we appreciate you coming out. Let's see if I can answer just a couple of questions. We've gone over so much time. There's all kinds of different types of, just had a question about interest rate returns. Go ahead and be from, okay. Yeah, that's about becoming a hedge fund. We're not essentially a hedge fund. We're using our personal money to purchase tax sale. The person that has the questions about hedge funds, just go ahead and we can email you that first. We can email you that personally back. Yeah, essentially once you've signed up, we have a question about signing up. Once you've signed up, essentially we're going to go ahead and set your username and password, and once you've gone through and signed up and you go ahead and do username and password, then you're going to go into the website and you're going to go into the training library and you're going to download the home study program. So that's where that's really kind of the first step that we ask our members to do is to go through and start reviewing the home study program. That's going to help give you the knowledge and to really go out there and to be successful with this. So whatever you guys are interested in, if this is something that we can help you, we definitely would love to. So again, we appreciate you. let us know if you have any questions, and we thank you for attending today's webinar.